I mean, the image is just, it's practically burned into our cultural retinas at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when you picture a world-changing creative genius, your brain automatically conjures up this very specific archetype, right?
Yeah, it's usually a 20-something in a hoodie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hunched over a laptop in some chaotic dorm room or a messy garage, just fueled by energy drinks at 3 in the morning.
Right. The classic Silicon Valley myth.
And we are just inundated with this deeply ingrained narrative that true innovation is, well, it's a lightning bolt that only strikes when you are young.
Which is incredibly daunting for most people.
Right. And if you are listening to this right now, chances are you have felt that creeping anxiety that your best ideas are somehow already behind you, or, that the window to make a meaningful mark in your field is rapidly closing.
It's a very common fear.
So our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle that pervasive and frankly kind of toxic cultural myth.
It really is a stubbornly persistent myth. And that's largely because our society suffers from extreme survivorship bias when it comes to early success.
Oh, for sure. We celebrate the outlier prodigies while totally ignoring the invisible, decades-long labor of everyone else.
Precisely. And the stakes here, they aren't just academic. I mean, misunderstanding the actual timeline of human creative output dictates how you plan your entire career trajectory.
Yeah, like what you study or who you choose to work with.
Exactly. If you operate under the assumption that your imagination has a biological expiration date, you make fundamentally flawed life choices.
So to get to the bottom of this, we are pulling from a highly illuminating April 2026 article published in Psychology Today.
It's a fantastic piece.
Yeah, it's titled, "Is Creativity a Young Person's Game?" And the author's Keith Sawyer.
He's professor at the University of North Carolina, right?
He is, and he's one of the foremost researchers on the science of human innovation. He's authored 20 books, including Explaining Creativity.
He really knows his stuff.
He's dedicated his whole career to isolating the hard data behind when and why human beings actually produce their most significant work.
And, the data he presents completely upends the conventional wisdom.
It really does. But to appreciate the science, we kind of have to look at the psychological weight of the myth we are fighting against.
The cultural reinforcement is just relentless.
We see it in the arts all the time. I mean, Jack Kerouac, Bob Dylan, Zadie Smith, Taylor Swift, they all achieved massive paradigm-shifting success at an unfathomably young age.
Right, and then you pivot to the business sector, and the narrative is even more extreme.
Oh, totally. The foundational companies of the modern digital era, like Meta, Snapchat, Airbnb, they were spearheaded by 20-somethings.
Many of whom notoriously dropped out of college.
Exactly. We're fed this steady diet of 30 under 30 lists that basically treat youth and innovation as synonyms.
Which creates a profound sense of fatalism for anyone over the age of 35.
There's actually a quote often attributed to Albert Einstein that captures this perfectly. He supposedly claimed that a person who hasn't made a great contribution to science before the age of 30 will never do so.
Ouch.
Right. You can imagine the psychological damage that inflicts on, say, a 31-year-old physicist trying to secure a grant.
It's devastating. Sawyer even opens his article with a conversation he had with a 55-year-old chemist colleague who flatly lamented, "Science is a young man's game."
Okay, let's unpack this. Because is that actually true?
Well, the tragedy of that statement is that it functions as a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when a professional believes their cognitive window has closed, they naturally pull back. They stop taking risks, they stop proposing radical hypotheses, and so naturally their output drops.
But the data doesn't support the anxiety.
Not at all. Sawyer points to comprehensive, quantifiable data to prove this fear is entirely misplaced. Researchers have tracked thousands of creators across their entire lifespans.
Tracking the exact timing of their most impactful contributions.
Yes, in scientific fields, this is highly measurable through, citation indexes, major publications, breakthrough patents.
So when they isolate the specific age at which a scientist does the work that eventually wins them a Nobel Prize,
the data does not point to the young 20-something disruptor.
but it doesn't point to the 80-year-old emeritus professor either, right?
Exactly. The peak falls right smack in the middle.
Okay.
It maps onto what statisticians call an inverted U function.
So like a bell curve.
Yes, if you visualize a bell curve, an individual's productivity and creative impact slowly build over the years, then they hit a distinct absolute peak in the middle of their working life.
And then a gradual taper.
Right. But the crucial distinction Sawyer makes, and this is the hinge upon which this entire concept rests, is that this inverted U curve is not based on your biological age.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it is dictated entirely by your career age.
Right, so we're talking about a stopwatch that starts the moment you enter a discipline, not the day you were born. So your biological body might be 45 years old, but if you just started studying architecture 5 years ago, your career age is only 5.
That is the defining metric. The cognitive peak is tied to the duration of your sustained engagement with the specific problems of a domain.
Okay, so if an individual hits their creative peak right in the middle of their career age, what is mechanically triggering that spike?
Like what is happening in year 15 that can't happen in year 2?
Yeah, exactly. What's the trigger?
It boils down to a behavioral mechanism that feels entirely counterintuitive, which is volume.
Volume.
Yes. The core insight drawn from decades of research is that creators generate their absolute best, most culturally or scientifically significant work during the exact same calendar year that they put the highest total volume of work out into the world.
Oh, wow. So it's basically like buying lottery tickets.
That's a good way to look at it.
The year you buy the most tickets is statistically the year you're most likely to hit the jackpot. You can't just buy one perfect ticket and expect to win.
What's fascinating here is how universally the volume principle applies.
Tell me more.
Well, based on the source text, when analysts examined the career of a highly successful serial inventor, the specific patent that ends up revolutionizing an industry and generating millions of dollars.
Let me guess. It's filed the same year they filed the most patents.
Almost always. And the pattern holds in the humanities as well. A painter's most famous, era-defining canvas usually comes from their most prolific year.
So the golden rule is that productivity is the prerequisite for creativity.
Exactly. Quantity leads to quality.
Which kind of goes against how we're taught to operate, right? We're taught to agonize over a single project to make it perfect.
Perfectionism is actually the enemy of the creative peak. Your conscious mind is a terrible judge of your own work's ultimate value.
Because you can't reliably predict what will resonate.
Right. So you produce a massive amount of material and let the environment act as the filter.
Okay, so we've established that high volume productivity dictates the peak. And that peak happens in the middle of your career age. But since productivity defines the peak, does the type of work you do change when that peak happens?
Yes, the timeline is not universal across every profession. Sawyer highlights a pivotal 1966 study showing that the discipline entirely dictates the timeline.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they categorize professional domains into distinct groups. The first group experiences early peaks, hitting their stride in their late 20s or 30s.
What fields are we talking about there?
Physicists, pure mathematicians, computer scientists, and engineers. Also painters.
Which totally explains why the Silicon Valley founder stereotype exists in the first place.
Exactly. Those fields rely heavily on fluid intelligence, the raw computational speed of the brain, and the ability to hold complex abstract concepts in your working memory.
So relying less on prior experience and more on sheer processing power.
Yes. Then the second category comprises the mid-career peaks,
Which hits around when?
typically in their 40s. This includes biologists and social scientists.
That makes sense. A biologist has to observe messy, living systems over time. They have to gather longitudinal data that inherently requires a 20-year runway.
Right, the complexity of the physical world demands extended observation. And finally, you have the steady output group.
Who's in that group?
Writers, historians, philosophers, and psychologists. They maintain a steady output straight through retirement.
Because they're relying on crystallized intelligence. They need decades of lived human experience to draw from.
Precisely. You cannot fast-track wisdom.
So here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Let's say I'm 45 and I just decided to pick up a paintbrush for the first time.
Okay, a new painter.
Does the fact that painters supposedly peak in their 20s and 30s mean I've already missed my window? Or does career age mean my clock is just starting now?
The clock is just starting now.
Oh, that's incredibly liberating.
It really is.
Yeah.
Career age resets when you start a new discipline. So your biological clock is irrelevant. Your most prolific work as an artist is statistically projected to hit when you are 55 or 60.
Because the timeline is bound to the work, not the body.
Exactly. Which is why these timelines matter so much for long-term planning.
Right. So, armed with this knowledge, how can you, the listener, strategically design your own life to maximize creative output?
Sawyer provides some highly actionable strategies.
First up, placing multiple bets. Like we said earlier, you have to continually finish projects and put them out into the world. You can't spend all your time on one great idea.
You have to spread your energy. And he also offers a brilliant hack for students navigating a volatile labor market.
Oh, the college hack. This was great.
Yeah, he suggests a strategic double major. You major in an early career field like math or engineering to get that first job immediate economic payoff.
Because that relies on fluid intelligence.
Right. But you simultaneously major in a later career field like literature, history, or philosophy.
So you're basically installing the mental models for sustained creative longevity for when you hit your 50s and 60s.
Exactly. It's a calculated hedge against cognitive stagnation.
But what if you're already mid-career? Or even older, what's the strategy then?
Well, mid-career is the time to ruthlessly leverage the resources, network, and reputation you've already built.
Don't hold back, basically.
Right. You have the foundation. Now use it to facilitate your highest volume of output. But for those nearing retirement, the advice is a bit blunt.
Yeah, you can't coast.
You really can. You must work just as hard as you did in your 20s.
Which sounds exhausting, honestly.
It might be painful, but the nature of the intensity shifts from raw, brute force hours to highly leveraged cognitive focus. And the payoff of combining intense work with decades of wisdom is immense.
So what does this all mean for us? Because an individual can only peak so many times based on their career age, right?
True.
So how do we transcend our own biological and professional timelines?
By combining them with others?
Cross-generational collaboration.
Yes. Creativity is inherently collaborative. Partnering with someone significantly older or younger creates a unique generative friction.
But that friction usually comes with a lot of ego.
Oh, definitely.
Like the older worker thinks they have all the expertise and the recent grad thinks the senior's expertise is just outmoded and irrelevant.
But that mutual skepticism is exactly why it works. You're forcing fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence into the same room.
There is undeniable historical evidence of this in the text, where bridging this 20-year gap literally changed the world.
Right. Look at the development of quantum mechanics. Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg had over 2 decades of age difference between them.
Heisenberg brings the fluid intelligence, the radically abstract math, and Bohr brings the crystallized wisdom to actually interpret it.
Neither could have built the full framework alone. We see the same thing in business. Look at Larry Page and Eric Schmidt at Google.
Oh, right, a 20-year gap. The young founders with the explosive search algorithm partnered with a seasoned executive who knew how to scale a global enterprise.
And it extends to the arts. Leonard Bernstein, a middle-aged master musician, drew direct inspiration for his compositions from his much younger students.
So he absorbed their fresh, unconstrained perspectives and channeled it through his decades of mastery.
Exactly. When you drop the defensive egos, collaboration is the definitive path to outperforming your individual timeline.
Okay, let's briefly recap this for everyone listening.
Good idea.
Forget the myth of the young genius. Your creative peak is dictated by your productivity, your specific field, and your willingness to collaborate across generations.
And perfectionism is a trap. Quantity produces quality.
Exactly. Now, before we go, I know you had a final kind of lingering thought on this.
I do. It builds on everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
If your creative peak is determined by your career age rather than your biological age,
Yeah.
and if cross-generational collaboration is the ultimate hack, then perhaps the greatest creative strategy of all is to intentionally become a beginner again every 20 years.
Oh, wow.
By totally switching your field, you effectively reset your career age to 0, which guarantees that you get to experience multiple creative peaks in a single lifetime.
That is such a powerful way to look at it. You don't have to just have one peak.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And to you listening, get out there, place multiple bets, start finishing those projects, and remember that your career clock is entirely in your own hands.